Okay, I'd like to call the May 2021 meeting to Planning and Zoning to order. Can I have a roll call, please, John?
Chair Costello.
Present.
Commissioner Bruno.
Present.
Commissioner Halm.
Present.
Commissioner Svetska.
Present.
Commissioner Cantillo.
Present.
Commissioner Barnes. Nope. And Commissioner Skovich. Absent. All right. You have a quorum.
Okay.
Skovich are missing.
Okay. I'd like everybody to face a flag if you have one and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, and commissioners, we're going to approve the minutes or make changes, whatever the case may be, to the minutes for the meeting dated April 29, 2021. Did everybody get a copy of the minutes?
Yes.
And did everybody have a chance to review?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm sure everybody saw this one, but on paragraph 2, the subparagraph 2, we want to change the second Indian Woods Lane to Indian Woods Drive. Currently reads Indian Woods Lane, not to be confused with Indian Woods Lane.
That's in my memo. So.
Oh, is it?
That's not part of the minutes.
Oh, okay. All right. That is right. That's true. Okay, does anybody have any changes to make in the minutes?
Nope.
Okay, does anybody, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, that was Dan and Danielle. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries to accept the minutes of the April, excuse me, that was the February meeting.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Okay, next on our agenda tonight, we have a discussion regarding the text amendment of the zoning code and our recommendation to the village board. John, you want to summarize this for us?
Certainly. It looks like Greg is joining us now. So we set up a shed and fence committee, and we're now on the shed portion of the discussion. And the committee has recommended ultimately to the village board, but I'm putting this before you because ultimately you're going to be getting special use applications for sheds in the village. And one of the things that the committee recommended was consideration for that area of the village behind Walgreens, known as the Robert Bartlett subdivision. A number of the houses in this area already have existing sheds that have been allowed by special use, and then a number of sheds also have popped up without the special use permit process. So we're trying to figure out an equitable way to allow for sheds in the village when certain circumstances apply. And those special circumstances would be, is it built on a slab? Is it a single car garage? Is it really needed for household use if I'm going to store a lawnmower or some equipment that I can't otherwise store in the basement of my house? And that is kind of the direction that the village board is looking at taking this ordinance. we have to remember that this applies village-wide. So a person on the west side of Wolf Road, which is all single-family homes, detached, it would apply to them as well. So I know that we're talking mostly about the Robert Bartlett subdivision, but it really is village-wide. And I also have to make a note about homeowners associations, which are primarily on the east side of Wolf Road. So starting with Ashbrook, going down to Acacia, the Indian Woods HOA, and then further south with Indian Woods Drive. When you have a planned unit development, you can have rules that tighten or are more restrictive than village rules. So Ashbrook, for instance, can prohibit sheds if they want, even if the village were to allow it because they're in HOA. The same thing with Acacia. They can prohibit outdoor structure sheds, whereas we can allow it village-wide. So they can't loosen the rules, but they can tighten them for themselves. So that is just a reminder of the differences in the village. But we're trying to do this village-wide. So that is kind of what we are looking at right now. And we have a person with a question.
What's the protocol for not being a commissioner and being able to speak, Maureen?
Well, we normally have kind of a public hearing, but we really don't have a topic of discussion, and we have a small group. John, do you object if we
No,
take?
not at all.
Okay, we'll go ahead and entertain your question.
Yeah, the Robert Bartlett Division, all homeowners there submitted a petition requesting that they not be under the sheds requirement. This was, I think, presented to someone at the village last summer. Since the entire subdivision is looking for an exemption for sheds, can we just exempt Robert Bartlett from this regulation?
Our village attorney has advised us not to, as it is a special use. They can come in and make application before the board. When we did this last in 1985, every one that I can find was approved. So it was a process that had to be followed because it is a special use process, but it is, so no, we just can't carve out Robert Bartlett subdivision and make its own zoning classification because it's already zoned R1, but we can set up criteria that would pretty much assure somebody that if they met the criteria that they could be granted a special use. Which
Yeah,
is
the attorney is saying that shouldn't be the case, but
we should not treat them differently, because I did pose that question.
but if that's recommended, then that could be done. Is that correct?
Yes. So one of the things that we remember on a special use is you have to notify everybody within 200 feet of the property with a registered letter. So everybody knows what's going on. And historically, now this is no guarantee of future performance, that when the neighbors object or approve of something, it usually is given great credence by the Planning and Zoning Commission and the village board. I got to shut my door. Hold on 1 second.
And pardon me, I don't mean to interrupt, but Diane is waiting to be let into the meeting. She just texted me.
Oh, thank you.
Panel 6.
John, are you able to let, oh, there she is. Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So Pat,
I think that should be taken another closer look for sheds, particularly since you have an entire subdivision that is almost not autonomous to the rest of Indian Head Park, is adversely impacted by this and have gone on, and they have sheds and fences. And what would it take to take another look? You had a petition signed by 35 residents of Bartlett Homes saying, let's not do this to us.
Which is why the village board established an ad hoc committee to review this and why we're talking about it right now. So that was the wishes of the board.
Yeah, Charlie, this was out at our last meeting, last VBT. We asked the exact same thing. So I think everybody's asking the same question.
So can I say something? And we all know Bartlett is entity unto itself. It doesn't look like the rest of Indian Head Park. And they have needs that are different, that appear to me. And so those sheds are not for lawnmowers they can keep in their basement. Those sheds in many cases are for their livelihoods. And I'm just wondering how we can accommodate them without a detriment to the rest of the village. I understand the rest of the village doesn't want sheds. We shouldn't.
Well, some of the village does want sheds though, so.
Really?
So, yeah, it is. It's not really a detriment. I think we don't all need it to put our lawnmowers in there, but and if they are nice sheds, we should be able to amend the law or the rule that we've set here in Indian Head Park.
Well, and that is why we have the special use process. It is, you file the petition, you appear before planning and zoning with your drawings. What kind of a shed are you going to put up? Are you going to Menards to buy a shed, or are you going to have an architect design one for you? And where's the shed going to be placed in the yard? Things of that nature. And that's why planning and zoning has the first look at it, and then it ultimately goes to the village board. So historically, this is what has always happened with the village since our inception. And I go back to 1985, and there were 20 or so ordinances passed in that year, each for an address, granting a special use for a shed.
What's the thought process behind having someone who is approved eventually sell their property and then have to take the shed down,
Well,
as opposed to letting it go with the home?
all right, so for the people who have existing sheds, our attorney advises us that without something specifically in the special use ordinance granting them permission, that the shed should stay with the property. The village board has the ability for all future special use permits to say shed comes down when you sell your property, or shed can stay when you sell your property. It's up to the Planning and Zoning Commission and ultimately the village board to make
The
that.
zoning commission can make that decision as an application is made,
They can make that.
or make a recommendation.
To the village board, yes. But ultimately, it's the board of trustees who makes that call.
So, John, like within the last couple of months, we talked about the chicken coops and the idea of developing like a standard for what they should look like. I mean, are we able to develop a standard for what the shed should look like? And then at that point, when they come in for special use, it's decided by the village, or does it continue to have to go back to the zoning and planning committee?
It is, unless if we were to change our zoning code, I would recommend it going before planning and zoning, because it is part of the character of the village. And I point out that our shed ordinance is unique among the municipalities I'm aware of. So in most towns, if you meet the setback requirements, you can put up a shed. For us, no, because of how we were envisioned as a village with the rolling terrain, the board felt it important to have a requirement for sheds. So that is what we're going on, the historical usage of sheds. So yeah, we can develop standards to help people with their application process, but as a special use, it is typically on a case-by-case basis. Now you have precedences you can set and go back to, and it's kind of a slippery slope. If you allow one person at 1332 whatever drive to have a shed, and 1334, whatever drive has the same criteria and the same type, it would be hard to turn them down. You could, but it would be hard to. So I think developing guidelines to help people know the process is great. But I think you should consider every case individually.
Is this a good meeting to talk about that now, John?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Because what's going through my head here is a little bit like, okay, if it's in the buildable area, I think and is nice, attractive and well built, I think we should give it a pass. But there's a lot of people who simply don't have that in the buildable area. So if it had to be outside the buildable area, maybe like with acceptable fences or built-in pools, if there's some kind of natural
Screening.
that, maybe that would be a criteria, because it would, it still would be not change the look.
You could screen it with like an arborvitae. Or some
Yeah,
good fence.
just in an area of your lot that has a lot of, bushes or trees or things like that. Maybe that would be something we would condition the approval on.
I think it does need to be something that we look at on a case-by-case basis, though, because, for example, there's a lot of sheds at the very south end of the village behind the homes that back up to Joliet Road.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether they're, legal or illegal or whatever, but having spoken to someone who lives over there, or live over there on Osceola Drive, the placement of those sheds is causing drainage issues for the neighbors.
Problem.
Because they're placed at the back of the lot against the fence. And when there are deluge rainstorms now, which we seem to have more often, they're diverting water out of the natural drainage path and into people's basements. And so there are people that have lived there for, decades who never had water in their basements who now sometimes do. And there's a lot of sheds there that are probably causing some of that problem. So they may have been approved way back in the day, or they may have just always been there and no one ever, said anything, and they're just there. But I think, especially in this village, every lot has probably some kind of unique situation, that the zoning commission might want to look at and say, okay, in this case, maybe it's okay to put it here or over here. Maybe we'd make an exception to the typical placement criteria that we establish, but
It's something like a topo.
Cause an issue for a neighbor in a situation like that, where it's maybe affecting the drainage pattern, or it's, something like that. So I do think it's hard to create, standards that you could just, that staff could just apply by right anywhere on any lot in the village, because there's so many unique lots in this village that have those kind of issues.
Would something like a topo survey of the lot?
Materials, maybe, size and materials, we could give a lot of guidance as to, if as long as you're not going to cause a problem for your neighbor and it looks this nice, you'd probably get approved. But I do think that the zoning commission would still need to look at it and just make sure that there aren't some kind of unique situations.
Yeah, like the last one that we didn't approve was right in the eyesight of the neighbor.
Yeah, and then it was 10 feet from the neighbor's kitchen window, even though it was 40 feet from their house. It was, it was.
And they already had an outdoor,
right. They already had an outdoor structure on their lot, so that was another. It was just an unusual configuration, of a lot layout that caused that problem. So. I think we could establish some quality criteria for them, and maybe a size limit or something like that, but we would still need to take a look at it, I would think, and issue a special use recommendation, and then have the board, either agree with what the zoning commission suggests or override it. They always have the ability to override a recommendation. But there are different shaped lots, different configurations that would have to be considered, I think, for something like that.
Anybody else have any input, commissioners?
Yeah, I mean, I do think, you know, when we had the fence conversation, there were a lot of residents on the west side of the village that were concerned about, you know, that visual appearance that would be affected by fences. And I would think that some of them, especially in some of those smaller or more uniquely shaped or sized lots, might also have some concerns about, you know, a neighbor putting up something that might be disruptive to their, you know, vista out their window or something. So I do think it's important to do it on a case by case basis, you know, especially if we're talking about the village as an entirety for those sections that are not HOA'd.
I agree.
I think it's a good idea.
I agree with you. And I agree with Diane's about if the fences or the shed, but the fences and sheds are two different items. And if you have a shed and it meets the criteria that we decide that it should meet, then we should allow those and maybe need to change the zoning rules for that. But fences and sheds are two different items too. Like fences, I agree 100%. Like I don't think the village should allow fences, but sheds there should be some allowance to let it proceed.
And I guess my other concern too would be, I wouldn't want us approving sheds to lead to, well, now I have a chicken coop kind of thing. Like I'm afraid of that slippery slope.
Right, I know.
So
100%.
yeah, I just want to be cautious about it, which I think is why dealing with it on a case by case basis is so important.
Right.
Yeah, I think, so I mean, my notes, we're talking about drainage, screening, the size of the structure, the materials of the structure, and certainly we'll always have the input of neighbors welcome on these issues. Does that hit most of the things? Because we want to formalize our criteria, I believe, don't we, John? So we're consistent.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, lot size would have a lot to do with it.
Would we also want to, oh, sorry. Would we also want to have some criteria about like the structural base for a shed? Like, must it be a poured concrete slab? Must it be stone, you know, something to allow better drainage? I mean, I guess because my thought is, you know, if we get into like hardscapes and we say, oh, it has to be on a slab, like then I think about the drainage or permeability issues.
Well, or if we want it to be a situation where the current owner needs it for some reason, you know, some business related reason or something, and we would prefer that the next owner be able to easily remove it. Then it can be an issue if we're requiring it to have, you know, a poured foundation or something like that. So.
But this would have to be permitted though, John, right? A building of a deck, building of a shed has to go through the permit process.
It would after approval. So it's kind of run simultaneously.
Yeah.
The person would submit their application. They would show exactly what they were doing. Then if the special use was approved, then we would issue a building permit. So you would know what you're getting at that time, at the time of application.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, John, is this shed issue, does it exist in any other part of Indian Head Park other than Bartlett?
We had a couple cases on the west side of town that are part of this discussion. So,
sorry?
I don't know how to get it.
We have a couple cases on the west side of town also. So it's just not Robert Bartlett, but there are a majority of the instances are in the Robert Bartlett subdivision.
But the majority of people that would be impacted by this would be Bartlett, right? I mean, like if we're,
Correct.
I think maybe we don't know if we made it commonly known that, if it were commonly known that you could get a shed with, through a process, I think a lot more in the village would be interested.
Probably. I have had
agree.
a couple, in the last 6 months, I've had 2 people inquire about sheds who live on the west side of town. And I just said, right now, the answer is no, you can't have it except with a special use. The village is studying it. We'll get back to you.
And Noreen, I agree with you that there's other parts of town that could want to do this once we develop some standards. I'm just wondering if this kind of represents an opportunity for us to kind of get the people from Bartlett together collaboratively with somebody and just try to do this on like not necessarily like a case by case basis, but like if they are the primary people impacted by it, if we can work with them to develop some standards and like kind of get 35 things into one and like come together on it, then it kind of sets the standard for the rest of the village, right? Like
They were part
they
of,
can't agree, then like why should we be going down the road of trying to like kind of pick different standards? Like just these are the people that are most impacted by it. Let's see if we can get everybody together, put them in the room and say, what do you guys want? And then that develops a standard for the rest of the village.
we did include them in the original discussions, but as far as developing standards, that was not part of the agenda at all. It might be worth bringing the committee back together and developing standards if that sounds very appropriate.
Yeah.
But can I say something? The standards for Bartlett might be different than the rest of the village may consider to be appropriate.
Yeah. Well, that's why we would ultimately make decide those standards, wouldn't we? We would ultimately make a recommendation to the board as to what those standards would be.
But drainage standards, foundational standards should be applied village-wide.
I agree. I agree with that.
Construction.
Go ahead, sorry, I interrupted you, John.
You want high-quality construction, no matter,
Right.
high-quality product.
I agree with that. I'm just saying that if we're talking anecdotally about a small percentage of people within the rest of the village that want this, and we've got one concentration of people with sheds, and we're still trying to figure out whether or not they're valid, and we want to have good standards moving forward, I think we start with the people that have them and use them rather than the people that in the future may or may not want them. I'm just like, let's go with what we have, develop it the way we want to, and then moving forward, other people would hopefully be able to fall into that. That's all I'm saying. Like, wait, I don't want to have a situation where a person from the west side says, well, the folks on the east side say this, and I want to do that. Like, I just think that it kind of creates a unique opportunity where it's very concentrated within the village. And that's the area where I think it would make a lot of sense to start.
And how many sheds are we actually talking about here?
We won't know until it's more widely known that you can have them, and they haven't been allowed in the village for many years.
Right now, we have about 15 to 20 that are non-compliant.
Mostly in Bartlett.
All but 2 or 3 in Bartlett.
All but 2 or 3.
And does that include the ones that are grandfathered?
No, I'm talking about non-compliant.
Brian, I like your idea. If most of the people that are involved are in one concentrated area, it sounds like that would be a good idea to get them together to talk about these very issues you're looking at.
Well, and Charlie, to go on what you were just talking about, I did talk with the people in the Bartlett subdivision about doing one, even though each case has to be individual, the mailings can be quite expensive because you have to notify every house within 200 or 250 feet. And rather than having 5 homes, let's say, do 5 separate mailings, do a combined mailing to encompass the entire area to help streamline the process. Because it can be daunting to go through the permitting process and helping them along, so. And then, like we did in 1985, and I only know this from reviewing the minutes and talking with the former trustee who was kind of spearheaded this, is they had just planning and zoning for several months, 2 or 3 cases on the docket every month, just to go through the shed special use process.
With regard to the standards and the fact that there are this, I don't know, 15 to 18 sheds that are in the Bartlett subdivision that are already there in place. I don't know, I mean, I haven't driven around to try to kind of do a visual scan to see, you know, what size they are, what age they are, what condition they're in. I would think one strategy would be to establish relatively high standards for future sheds, but be a little bit more forgiving in the approval process, you know, for these sort of after the fact special uses. You know, if there are sheds in the Bartlett subdivision that don't meet those standards, I don't think we go in and say, well, you have to rebuild it, or you have to paint it, or you have to re-roof it, or whatever, you know. Because there may very well be some that are, you know, they're metal or prefab or, you know, something that we wouldn't necessarily include in our standards going forward, that, you know, because they predate the standards and they're already there, we would have to be considerate of the fact that they ought to be approved as they are. But going forward, if someone wanted to replace it, you know, if it collapses and they need to replace it, then the understanding would be they'd replace it with something that meets the village standards.
Just like any non-conforming.
Kept in good repair, just like everything else, you know, on everyone's property. But I don't know that just, you know, if there are a bunch of, you know, prefabricated metal sheds in Bartlett, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's something that we should allow in our standards going forward. But I do think it wouldn't necessitate insisting that those be replaced with something that's different than what's already there. Maybe that's how we would address the standards issue, that the standards are sort of from here on out, you know, and that's the understanding.
If we're going to establish standards, do we have an expert to advise us? I mean, I don't know anything about sheds. I mean, who would determine that? Maybe somebody else does.
We have inspectors for any building that's done with permits, John, do we not, John?
Correct, yes, we do.
So they could know as far as the quality of construction.
Okay.
And a drawing of how it would look with plants and vegetation around it. I mean, it wouldn't accept anything that was obtuse. I mean, it's our eyes, right? Our eyes would be able to decide if it was going to be good or not.
Yeah.
As well as the inspectors to say it was a solid piece of ground that didn't ruin drainage. I mean, it's not science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excuse me, this is Lou Roski was on the committee about sheds and fences. Could I say something?
Yes, please.
Okay, we have actually about, I want to say out of the 35 homes, I'm going to say minimum 32 sheds that are on our properties here. There's maybe 1 or 2 that are actually metal, and that man has been here for 42 years, and it looks fine. He's my next door neighbor, actually. That's how I got involved in this, even though I'm involved in it. Okay, and walking around and talking to everybody, our area is mainly flat land, and nobody has a drainage problem with them to begin with. So that I've heard of any problem with drainage coming from a shed, you know, blocking any type of drainage. And we've had those floods, like you said, you know. So. And mainly most of them are 10 by 10 or 10 by 12 sheds is what they are. I think mine's a 10 by 8 actually. And
And I
I've
would
been here 22 years, so.
I would definitely like to have in our criteria that we'd like to attempt to preserve the park-like atmosphere of the village. Recognizing that in the Bartlett subdivision, it is a little bit different than the rest of the village. So maybe we could be a little bit more forgiving about that criteria. But yeah, anyway, similarly to how we have our findings of facts, you know, we need to set up some general guidelines that we'll be discussing every time it comes in front of us, I take it.
That's what I would really like. It would help the process, especially when we're talking to the applicants, giving them.
And then it'll be fair and we'll be consistent. Yeah. Mhm. So, okay, so how are we going to proceed on that, John? Should, when we review the minutes, should we, can you draft something that, these are the criteria?
We'll get some criteria for you for the next meeting.
Okay, and then we'll discuss it and tweak it.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, great. Any further discussion on that, or do everybody feel we covered it well enough?
Hey, Lou,
Yes,
would you give me a call Thursday? We can,
Thursday.
yeah, we can start talking about this a little bit.
All right,
Thanks.
no problem. The office, right, number?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, no problem, John. Thursday.
Okay, that was a great discussion. Thank you, everybody.
You, everybody.
Okay. Okay, John, the road construction project.
Welcome
Did
to.
everybody get the materials and have a chance to review?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Welcome to Indian Head Park, where we have 2 seasons, winter and road construction. All right, so for the village projects, Acacia Drive, which is the street in front of Village Hall, is going to be completely reconstructed, probably starting in the next 2 weeks, ongoing until probably September. They're going to take the road down to the base, actually to dirt, put in a new base, and completely rebuild the road, curb and gutter. We're putting a sidewalk in on the outer loop of Acacia Drive, and any trees that are removed will be replaced. And that is a federally funded project. We're also looking with village funds to do what's called a grind and overlay, basically taking off the top 2 inches of asphalt and replacing it on Indian Woods Lane, which is on the north end, as opposed to Indian Woods Drive, which is on the south end of the village, Timber Ridge Court, Hiawatha, Sequoia, and Acacia Lane. I'm sorry, Acacia Drive, Acacia Circle, my apologies, which is where the Wilshire buildings are. So those are going to be bid out and hopefully approved for summer construction. The Tollway is continuing their work. Some people were surprised that Tollway work is going on and that trees are coming down. They are replacing a down wall and moving it a little bit closer in to allow for the Tollway expansion. And that is ongoing this construction season. So the sound wall comes down now, it will be replaced by autumn. So the Tollway is removing a lot of the vegetation on their right of way, which they have the right to do. They are replacing it in kind with appropriate trees and grasses for retention of the slope, the dirt slope. So that's what's going on with the Tollway. The village did sell property that it owned west of the creek but east of the tollway, we owned about 4 acres that was given to us by the tollway when the tollway went in. And the tollway is using that as for stormwater management purposes. It's a dry retention basin, detention basin, I'm sorry, just to manage the stormwater runoff from the tollway. So that has no impact on flooding in the village. It's just a compensatory storage. So that is what's going on with the tollway. Plainfield Road.
Hey, John,
yeah.
before we get to the Plainfield project, on the 294 project, there's been at least a good set of neighbors, a lot of residents along that area that have expressed concern about not having a timeline for the wall to be rebuilt, nor any type of like feedback about how high the wall would be and some other items. I just wonder if you could shed some light on whether or not you got any clarification on those items. I mean,
it's available on our website through the links on our website, which take you to the tollway.
I know, John, but I'm not looking to steer people in the direction of a website. I mean, we need to collaborate. If this decision was made by the village with Department of Transportation, I feel like
no,
people through the neighborhood need to be a little more aware of what
the tollway is responsible for the height of the walls. They just tell us what they're going to be. So,
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
The tollway did not consult the village on the height of the sound walls. They have their own criteria that they follow.
Okay, so is there any way that the village can continue to pursue some answers on that on behalf of the residents?
Yeah, I have the answers. I just don't have them in front of me. And we will post it on our website a little bit more clear as to the height of the walls.
Will it be the same as what's there now?
No, some of them are going to be height increased.
Oh, nice. Okay.
There's just a lot of conversation within the neighborhood and the villages about what's going to happen. A lot of us who spend some time like walking through the neighborhoods, there's been a lot of conversation about it. So to the extent that we can steer them in the right direction for their questions, I just think it'd be helpful. I don't want to direct people to a website. I'd like to be able to communicate.
Well, and
not like in real time, but enough to give them like a little bit of clarity on what it means for the back of their homes.
Absolutely. And so when people do ask us questions, we do give them direct answers. So, and some of them are very specific. So we do.
And the website has contacts for the tollway to send emails to or phone calls, and they do respond. And if anyone has questions, they do respond. But there's a lot going on with that, and I know people don't like it, but the tollway is different than the Department of Transportation, like IDOT or anything like that. They're their own company essentially, and there is a contact on the website that directs people to send emails and calls, and people do respond if they do have concerns or questions.
Yeah, I mean, I recognize fully that we're into this at this point. I'm not like trying to, lack constructive criticism about it. I'm just trying to say that there's a lot of people talking about it and it comes up locally. So we're just trying to direct people in the right direction. It's not a matter of why it happened in the past. It's what's going on in the future regarding the reconstruction of the walls and other items that those people just happen to be concerned about. To the extent that people can shed some light on it, it's going to be very helpful.
Okay.
And maybe it's a good idea to take these kinds of questions, not only this question, but other questions that might come up from various parts of the village, and do sort of an outline or question and answer in the newsletter.
Yes, but the newsletter comes out quarterly. The village president talks about this at length at every board meeting, And then at the next board meeting in a week, we're also going to have a segment about the tollway to answer a number of the questions that have come up from individuals in the last couple of weeks,
Great.
especially with regards to stormwater management.
That'll be helpful.
One time when we had the tollway people out, this was at the beginning of the project, they said if you would like to visualize the sound walls and the way that the medians and reconstruction would occur, that you should go out on the 94 west of O'Hare, where they reconstructed that whole area for approximately 50 miles west of O'Hare. And they said the sound walls and the design of that roadway is consistent with what they will be doing at 294, with some tweaks because it's been several years since that road was reconstructed. But they did say, the engineers said at that point, if you want to visualize it, you could go out and see that. And the sound walls are, to John's point, they are higher.
Yeah.
and they're different than what we have been living with on 294.
They're actually very nice, considering what they are.
Yeah, it's just looks very different. The median looks very different. The lighting looks very different. If you just happen to go west out there, Elgin and even Schaumburg, you will see a very different roadway, the way I look at it. And the sound walls are completely different than what we've seen on our stretch of 294.
If you wouldn't mind, John, I have a couple of questions about the local work once the discussion is done on the sound walls and 294.
Say it again.
I have a couple of questions I'd like to follow up with on the local work.
Okay.
But I don't want to interrupt the conversation
Okay,
if that's
all
still
right.
going on. Okay.
Any more, I guess, you want to circle back to the local work?
Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, perfect. So with regards to the streets that have been identified for repaving, there have been a lot of survey teams out doing a lot of marking, at least on Hiawatha. And some of the neighbors have communicated to me that they were told that they are also going to be redoing the drainage on those streets.
Drainage is usually part of the work, yes.
Okay. Do we have any idea like how far into the respective front yards that they might be going for that drainage, or like what the structure of that project is going to look like?
No,
and what
not
the
yet.
timelines are?
I don't have
Okay.
that information yet. They're still doing the survey.
Okay.
I can tell you though that it will be in the right of way. Or
Right.
it should be in the right of way because we have unique right of ways on Hiawatha and Sequoia.
Right. So we would be communicated with later what side of the street that would be on and how
Correct.
much of the right of way
Right.
they would be utilizing.
I have no idea the scope of the drainage work until
Okay.
they tell me.
Okay. And that would be communicated to the residents,
Yeah.
I would hope, in a timely fashion.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we will normally just send out a letter to everybody saying this is what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, because some of the residents, I mean, myself included, were concerned about some of the trees and plantings and such that were, in that right of way area and drainage, how that would affect them.
Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion or questions on the road construction, the current road construction projects?
Well, typically for a project like that, will there be a letter or a flyer dropped off that gives residents, I don't know, a week or a couple weeks of notice
Yes. Yeah.
about when access to their property might be affected?
Yeah. We'll do the letter to start, and then as we get closer to the day of construction, then we do the flyers.
Okay.
Just we did this similar in Old Town when we were redoing some of the water mains.
Okay. Just so we don't schedule the block party for the week that they're
Yeah.
out there. Okay.
Okay. Then we'll move along to the Plainfield Road corridor study.
Just an update. So with part of the bridge work that's being done on over 294, they're going to be replacing that bridge, and they're going to be doing it in the next several years, and they're going to basically do half and half. Do one half of the bridge, and then later on do the other half of the bridge. And they're looking at reconstructing or adding lanes to Plainfield Road from basically Shady Lane and Burr Ridge to East Avenue and Countryside. And the study group looked at a number of options. And one of the options that was thrown out there was 5 lanes from Plainfield Road all the way from Shady Lane and Burr Ridge to East Avenue and Countryside, going through all of Indian Head Park and Western Springs. And that was an option that was dismissed by the start of the study group, but is still kind of in there. And a lot of neighbors are concerned in Indian Head Park and Western Springs about 5 lanes plus a bike path or a pedestrian path on either side. First off, I do not believe that there is right-of-way there to accomplish this. Second, I believe that the traffic counts do not warrant 5 lanes, 2 in each direction plus a center turn lane, and all of the construction that goes along with that. So there are a number of signs on Plainfield Road. There's a grassroots initiative to stop the 5 lanes. People have commented to the website that I gave you in the packet about expressing your opinion, and tomorrow is the drop dead date for the opinion. So I'm not asking the commission to make a recommendation, but I'm letting you know that you have the ability to submit comments for or against 5 lanes. I know that the managers in the area are against it, so we are doing our own network within the study group. The Council of Mayors has issued a statement to the county saying, hey, you got to let the municipalities chime in on this. And I'm encouraging the village president to meet with another village president to send a letter expressing that opinion also. So just letting you know what's going on.
And it's a phase 1 study, so
Yeah,
it's
it
the
is.
super beginning of anything. So like everyone's getting up in arms about
Right.
it, but
It is, but people are concerned, and I think, let it be known, and we can go from there. Ideally, when we are part of the study group before, the village's goal, and this would have been adopted by the village board, is to have a pathway on the south side of Plainfield Road connecting the bridge to the existing sidewalk near Indian Woods Drive. And then ultimately to Wolf Road. And then furthermore, the master sidewalk plan has a pathway on either side of Wolf Road going down to the very south end of the village, and ultimately, and then at Joliet Road, should be going out to Walgreens. So that is the master sidewalk plan.
Great.
So anyway, that's what we're working on, letting you know. So that's all. I just wanted to update you on that.
Well, that's good to know. Very good.
The Plainfield Road Bridge is being completely replaced as part of the Tollway project, right? So that will be replaced with a bridge that's wide enough to accommodate whatever kind of path or sidewalk
Right.
ultimately can connect.
it's wide enough right now as well.
Bridge, right?
Yeah, it's
Right.
wide enough now to have 2 lanes and a bike path. I mean,
And a bike path, yeah. It just doesn't, because there's no way to safely get from one side to the other now. And eventually there will be. We just don't know the configuration.
Right.
Okay.
So
But John, just so I'm clear, tomorrow, you said tomorrow's the drop dead date
for
for,
public comment submission.
and you're asking that we make a recommendation.
I'm not asking that the commission make a recommendation. I'm letting you know so that as individuals, you can comment if you wish.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't have enough information to ask you to make a recommendation. So, and that is why it's not formally on the agenda for action. this just came about relatively recently. And some of the managers were actually kind of blindsided that it was actually more mentioned in the phase 1 study, which is just the look-see, is it even feasible for this to happen? So right now we're doing a phase 1 study on Wolf Road, just to see what can happen for pedestrian access. So.
And just so I'm clear, you mentioned earlier in your summary, and I don't want to paraphrase you, so just clarify it. You said it was dismissed by the study group, but it's still in?
Right. It was not recommended by the study group, but it's still in the phase 1 process.
Okay, and who's on the study group? Just so I'm clear.
It was basically the local village managers and public works directors.
Well, what they told us April 14th, this is Amy Jo, is they told us that the all 5-lane option, and they were all on the video on the website if you want to see it. The all 5-lane option from County Line Road to East Avenue was discounted and eliminated as a viable plan. The other 2 plans that they are recommending to go forward, or 3 plans, the one plan has a 5-lane from County Line to Wolf. So it's not that they're recommending the entire road be 5 lanes. They are recommending in their alternative a 5-lane option from County Line to Wolf Road. So that's the option that's being opposed by a lot of people that are chiming in.
And it also, if I can add to that, Amy Jo, it also includes a sidewalk on one side and a bike path on the other side. And the bike path is, I can't remember, but pretty wide. Do you remember?
Yes,
how?
and it's adjacent. It's right next to the fence that is next to the pedestrian path for Timber Trails.
Mhm.
So many of us have commented that you're putting in a sidewalk that is right next to a sidewalk. It just so happens that one is a private sidewalk and one is a public sidewalk.
Did they find that feasible to do that? I mean, you would have to cut into people's property at that
Right.
point.
So
Quite a
I don't
bit.
think that the existing right-of-way will support it, so they would have to do acquisition.
Then the 3 of the options that they put in their presentation on the 14th included a discussion about Arrowhead Point that I let John know about having to quote, and they didn't say what would impact Arrowhead Point.
Mhm.
They
Oh.
just had it in the pros and cons section. If you look at the presentation, it says something about land acquisition in Arrowhead Park.
Amy, I think what that might refer to, I don't know, but what's also in that plan is they're going to widen all the intersections, including Plainfield and Wolf Road, to accommodate trucks. And I don't know that we want trucks coming down our streets, but I think that's probably why it impacts it.
Well, and then also one of the configurations that I saw was like double left-hand turn lane. So it is, I think it is worth, even though it's a phase 1, voicing our opinion as to the no to 5 lanes.
Can I add one more thing that I think is significant? As they build this road, they're taking out vegetation and there's no plans to replace them. So it would be up to the village, if we were able to afford that, to replace the vegetation to make it look like what we want Indian Head Park to look like.
Is that stated somewhere in their presentation that they would not replace vegetation? I mean, some would obviously be impacted if they're gonna make the roadway wider, but
I know it's not
Believe that they would
included.
have some
I don't know that
standards.
it specifically says it won't, but it's not included in the presentation.
I will just note, I work for a engineering and planning firm that does some of this kind of work. And at this point in the process, you know, they have to note and take into very special consideration any potential impact to a public property, you know, a church property, a school property, anything like that. There's a heightened level of review of the impacts of those kinds of properties. So it you know, in the case of Arrowhead Point, it shows up on our village map as a publicly owned park. You know, and so they have to note it. They have to make sure that they are very clear about any kind of potential impact on that. Even if it was like, we need 2 feet of the northern edge of it or whatever, they still have to highlight that as an impact. And that's just related to the environmental impact work that they have to do. So in a case like this, you know, they would come to the village and say, is there a concern? You know, what is your future plan for this park, or is it going to be affecting anything? And, you know, and the village would have the opportunity to respond to that. But that's also a part of the, you know, just the environmental impact work that they have to do, that anything that is a public amenity, you know, they have to be very, very clear in their work that they might be impacting it, no matter how minimally. So, you know, maybe there's a potential in the discussion if they do want to impact it by taking a little corner of it, or they need to, you know, make the sidewalk wider or something, you know, that the village can then go back and say, well, in exchange for that, we'd like you to, you know, put some trees in there, or, you know, do something that kind of mitigates the impact to us and ends up being a positive. So all of those discussions are going to happen in the future, but, you know, what we need to do right now, I think, is be clear with them if there's local concern, you know, about the prospect of widening west of Wolf Road. I don't see in what they presented a justification for why the road west of Wolf would have to be wider than everything east of Wolf. And so, and I've submitted an email with, you know, with stating my concerns about that, as, you know, just as part of the public input.
They did say they were after possibly off.
You're muted, Charlie.
I'm sorry, we missed a little part of that.
Yeah, they did say that they were going to be looking possibly at some of the land at Arrowhead Park. That was mentioned in the presentation as a possibility.
And I think that's probably related to these ideas they have about how to reconfigure the intersection, where they might have to, you know, increase the turning radius or something like that. So that would be depicted in more detail going forward. But for right now, they just have to note, you know, we might be touching a corner of a publicly owned piece of property, and they have to call that out as a special impact. So
hey, John, just so I understand it, phase 1, when does it go to phase 2? Like, can you just outline a little bit about the process and kind of what input the village has as we move forward?
All right, the phase 2 process, once the phase 1 is complete, there's usually a year or two before they do. It's going to be a year at least while the phase 1 process goes on, from what I remember. And they do take a very long time. And I'm basing this on our own phase 1 study of Wolf Road, which we started earlier this year, but we probably won't know until December of this year, the full scope of the phase 1. So we have a while to go on the phase 1 study.
Okay.
And then it's usually a year or so after that they'll start doing phase 2, which is the actual engineering for it. And then phase 3 would be construction.
Okay, so again, like between now and phase 2,
well, probably for Plainfield Road, off the top of my head, I would say February of next year at the very earliest.
Okay.
But phase 2 represents having chosen one alternative. All right, right now they're evaluating alternatives, and they'll choose one to then go actually into the design of that and get into much more detail. So this is the point in the process for people who have concerns about any or of the alternatives or aspects of the alternatives to speak up by email, you know, and submit those comments, because they have to take all that into consideration.
And the comments have been a lot of people are submitting comments again.
Yeah, I mean, there's a petition that's gone around that my understanding is there's something like 450 signatures that have concerns about the issue in general, but nobody's aware of whether it's 5 lanes from Shady Lane to Wolf or 5 lanes from Shady Lane to East Avenue at this point. Like, it's just kind of like, we don't want this to happen. So I'm just trying to understand at what point the village has any type of impact on what's going to ultimately happen. I don't know, like when we weigh in or like what role we play at what time. That's what I'm trying to understand.
I think that right now we have the residents submit their comments by tomorrow. And then at the board meeting on the agenda, we're going to have this item for the board to vote on their position that we're going to send off to the county board and to the transportation department. And that will weigh in also.
But ultimately, does the county board or transportation department, is it just advisory or does
No,
it have?
ultimately the county board would approve this.
Okay.
Plainfield Road is a county road. So
That's,
the Cook County Department of Highways and Transportation would make their recommendation to the county board, and then the county board would vote.
okay, so the county board decides. So
Yes,
talking to people like Sean Morrison and like your county commissioners
correct.
may be more impactful than what we ultimately decide here in the village.
Correct. And the county commissioner has already been contacted about this with the no recommendation.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Thank you, John. That was good discussion. Let's see what's going on in the triangle.
All right, so there have been, I get nibbles on development, and when they become serious, I will let you know. Well, I'm letting you know. We have 2 potential developments happening in the triangle. One, I'm very confident in, and then the other one, not so confident in, but it's still a possibility. The Mazer property, which is property west of Wolf Road, south of Joliet Road, west of Vine Street. So it's a vacant parcel right now. It looks like we have some potential development going in there. I've been working with the developer off and on for the last 6 months on this. So it looks like it might happen. So I thought it would be time to review the plan unit development ordinance so that when the development comes, we're a little bit better prepared to address the issue. Now, for those of you who are new or newish to the Planning and Zoning Commission who weren't part of the PUD ordinance process, plan unit development is simply a zoning overlay that goes over the existing B3 business zoning for the triangle. And what the PUD will allow is for some give and take and some creativity in the development of the vacant parcels. What happens is, normally with our building codes, if you come in and you meet the zoning criteria, you get a bill and you submit your building plans, you get a building permit, and you put up your building. In this case, because we have the PUD ordinance in place, you have to go through the public hearing process. So the process will be, they meet with the village board very briefly for a very high level overview of the project. And if they get the kind of the warm fuzzy from the village board, then we can go before planning and zoning with a public hearing, and then planning and zoning gets to weigh in and then make a recommendation to the village board for approval. It tightens up the development process and gives a little bit more, a lot more control to planning and zoning and the village board with how the development happens. So the triangle is, we have 3 vacant parcels in the triangle. Right now, we have the property I've just been talking about, the old Mazer parcel. We have the former Dome site, which is at the northeast corner of the triangle. I'm sure that many of you remember the Dome restaurant.
Yes.
that has long been since torn down. And then the final parcel is south of Wolf Road, south of the Salon Suites, where there used to be 3 homes that were abandoned that had been torn down probably 4 years ago. So those are the 3 parcels in play. And that they're all part of the triangle. So this PUD ordinance covers all of them. So I just want you to know that it probably will be coming before you in the June meeting. And I wanted to go over the plan unit development ordinance with you tonight. Clear as mud so far?
So you clarified that the what's coming before us to think about is only on the Mazer site to the
Yes.
west of everything that's there now?
West of Vine Street, yes.
Okay.
So we have an insurance company that is looking to put up a 2-story building. They would occupy the upper level, and then they would lease out space on the lower level. Because it's kind of an unknown, we actually can set the criteria for what would be allowed in the lower level. So what do we want? They're not looking to do a mixed business and residential development where you typically would have businesses on the lower level and residences on the upper level. They're doing a 2-story business building. So they could have a restaurant in the lower level or other compatible offices in the lower level, but that is something that we're looking at. One of the things that you get to do in the PUD criteria is approve the building exterior. What is the building going to be made of? Brick, other masonry, wood, or whatever you agree to with the developer. And it's kind of a negotiating process. You also get to look at things like signage on the property, parking circulation, drainage. They do have to comply with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District drainage criteria, so they have to have on-site storage for water. Are they going to do detention where they can have like a fountain to break up for like a little pond and use that as some of their stormwater management criteria, things of that nature. So you have a copy of the PUD document that we came up with. And I just thought if you wanted to have any questions, we can talk about it. Diane is very versed in this also, and so she can chime in too. So
I just missed the first part of that. What kind of development is, what did you say, insurance business?
it's an insurance company. JJ Dory, they have a business in Burr Ridge. They have the 2nd floor of the BMO building. They're looking to put up their own building.
So John, this is different from the plans that we had originally spec'd out.
Right. Remember, originally we were just concepts, so nothing hard in stone. And that is one of the hard parts about putting a concept plan out there, because even I look at it and say, hey, that's not what we thought about to begin with, but it was just an example. So.
Well, I'm not on the board yet, so I won't talk, but I think the whole thing needs to be looked at in totality.
That is part of it. How does this project fit in with everything else? Mm-hmm. Do you want to have a duplication of Indian Head Plaza, which is the strip mall where Wolf's Head is? Or do you want to have it geared for like the condominium buildings that are out there? There are 2 condominium buildings that condos. So and it's all brick. Do you want something like that? We're really trying to look for establishing criteria for when Indian Head Plaza itself is redeveloped.
But
so we're looking long term. So
John,
concept of that
the Mazer
concept of that was really designed for 2 restaurant pads originally, right, John?
it was in concept. Would the area support 2 more restaurants? I don't know.
Well, I guess where I'm getting at is in the concept, we had a kind of holistic approach of what we thought the best land use as well as tax revenue would come before the village. If we're going to now allow for individual development on certain parcels that is away from the concept, then I guess we all have to come to an agreement that that's okay. Abandoning what we had thought would be best for the village and now looking at singly what a particular concept would be and what it would mean to the village, independent of the overall concept plan.
Right, but that was a concept. And the hard part about this is Indian Head Plaza isn't going away. It's fully occupied, and the owner has no desire to do massive improvements or to tear down the building to construct something new. So we have 3 parcels that are available. What are we going to do with them? I mean, the village, in theory, and I say this in theory, could buy Indian Head Plaza. Now, whether or not we could afford it, I'm not even gonna, no, we couldn't. But unless if we were going to take ownership of the triangle, we really have to let private development take its course. And is an insurance office on a 2-story building where they take the upper level and have retail or compatible uses on the lower level, is that something that the village would be interested in?
Hey, John,
It's not that far away from where we originally had thought on certain concepts, that the lower half would have some form of retail and the upper half would be residential. So we're not that far away from the concept. It's just, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we're abandoning the concept and we're opting for the opportunity for us to take advantage of a developer, not one that's going to develop the entire parcel, but just one segment of that. And we want to weigh in and figure out if this is feasible or not, and move away from the concept that we had.
I would disagree that we're not consistent with the concept. I mean, just the fact that it's not a Starbucks and the ones that were in the plan. This is still a nice, I mean, we can set the parameters for what it looks like. If it's a beautiful building, nicely landscaped, I think it's consistent with what we had in mind.
Yeah, I guess what I was saying is we spec'd out the entire parcel for a concept, and now we're going to take a particular parcel and allow that to develop independent of our entire vision. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to clarify that.
But I don't think it was ever conceived that it was all going to happen all at one time. How could that have ever happened? I mean, this is a project that's, and I guess, John, what I want to know is, in June, will they come forward with plans or something just vague?
No,
we have to. Pardon?
Plans. They have to come before you with solid, this is what the building's going to look like, not concept, but actual photographs and architectural drawings.
Okay, so then we can decide if this looks like our vision. It doesn't have to be exactly what we had mapped out, but if it looks like our vision, it's consistent.
I wouldn't read too much.
They have this document, and the idea is they're not coming to us until they've taken it under careful consideration with what they're bringing forward, right? It's not going to be news to them when they get here in June that we have these expectations. Supposedly they're coming to us with something that they think meets our expectations, and it's up to us to tell them whether we agree or not, right? Or comment on that.
And John, in these plans that are coming before us, is there any financial exposure to what the village would be able to realize with their particular type of business? What's the tax revenue of an insurance company, and does that even have any?
It would be a standard office building. So yes, there is, we can derive a rough estimate of property tax revenue.
Okay, and that doesn't include the lower half, which has its own independent.
Right, no, it would be the building in totality.
Yeah.
We would know square footage, usage, and then we could determine values from that.
And then the sales tax would be independent on the lower levels.
Correct.
Based
Depending
on
on what use it was.
Yeah, agreed. Okay.
Hey, John, can I ask a question real fast? Forgive me if I don't know this, but is this building on the property that was recently part of the Venture One discussion, or is this completely separate?
Completely separate.
Okay, thanks.
So if I could just throw it in here, I've reached out to some individuals who are with a firm that actually scouts out sites for places like Starbucks and things like that. And he looked at our, the ordinance and all the information from the person that you contracted with to study the issue. And he said it's going to be extremely difficult to get any kind of business in there. It's called a tweener. It's between two business districts. It's landlocked by the Tollway. So I think getting a building like this might be, I mean, they came to us. That's a good sign. And for the rest of it, he recommended mixed residential. So I don't know. I mean, I'd like to work as hard as I could to get something more than that in there, but that's the reality.
That is, and we looked at, ideally the dome parcel would be a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts, and we've reached out, and
They won't. No.
They won't. And the asking price of the dome parcel in particular is just too high for anybody to make a return on investment. So obviously, my kid sings the best. My kid is the most talented one out there. Well, Nick thinks that his property is the most valuable one in the world. So.
And what he said to me was, if there are businesses like Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, or others that are interested, they would have come to you already.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and I am excited about this, but at the same time, the building will be there for a very long time. And so we have to make our right decision. And we have to weigh in carefully on this.
And I envision trying to make the whole area look the same if you get a facade or something.
I agree. And there are grant programs out there for facade improvement programs. We actually had it budgeted in prior years and it came out. It is something worth looking at. I know that the chamber is interested in facade improvement programs, and we've had meetings with the chamber off and on. Maybe in the future we can, because quite frankly, Indian Head Plaza it's seen better days.
Yeah.
Let me be polite.
John, whatever happened with the gas station idea with Oak Pantry?
It was not well received by the village board, so to speak. They had a lot of issues from a planning perspective, and I don't think that the gas station would work, and so they've kind of gone away.
I get it.
It was a third tier gas station, and on our most prominent corner, we had concerns.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the vision from the PUD concept for that corner would be for it to be able to be developed separately from the shopping center property, but be more internally focused where, the circulation could be from inside the parking lot and the perimeter could be nicely landscaped and, so that the corner is attractive. And I think that gas station idea was just going to sort of exacerbate traffic problems rather than solve them.
I remember now when we originally approved the concept for the PUD, I was an advocate for a gas station at that corner, and I was shot down by everybody both in the Planning and Zoning Commission and the village board. So I remember that distinctly, because I was more concerned about the cash coming in rather than
Well, the company that proposed putting the gas station there has one on Ogden, I think in Downers Grove.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I drove past it yesterday. It's the ugliest thing. You wouldn't want it, you know, and the convenience store behind it had these big advertisements plastered all over the windows. I mean, it just wouldn't work.
that's why I called it a third tier gas station.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's going to be exciting. See where we're going with that stuff. That's great. So we probably should all familiarize ourselves again with that PUD and study it before our next meeting. So we're clear on all the concepts. Yeah. And what's the other idea? Or you're not going to share that tonight, John? The other potential developer.
So this is, I've been approached by the owner of the Driftwood Cafe about some type of use further south on Wolf Road, on the vacant parcel on Wolf Road. He is still up in the air about what he wants to do, and he cannot get past the concept stage of possibilities where in the PUD ordinance, we want to know specifically what's going to go on. We don't want to give anybody carte blanche for development. We want to have some control. And so he is yet to solidify his plan. So I've heard everything from medical facility to an entertainment facility. I shot down self-storage sheds already, things of that nature. So he is trying to figure out what's best for himself for development. So we'll see, but he is talking to the owners about purchasing it. So
Good to know.
now, one of the neat things is the first one in of the 3 vacant parcels kind of sets the tone for everybody else.
Mm.
So that's what we need to be focused. So we should spend most time on the first one in, because then we're going to see it elsewhere.
Mhm.
So.
And do you see this, the insurance company, are they willing to spend money? Are they gonna, do you feel like they will spend a lot of money to make it look nice, or?
Yes, yeah, I've seen, so what they're doing is they're working with an architect, and they're basically taking one of his buildings in another state and just mirroring it here. And I had a look at it on a cell phone, and it looked fairly decent. So they're supposed to bring in full-blown photographs and the display of what it's supposed to look like. So I met with them 10 o'clock this morning. They got the word. I mean, it was an hour-long meeting, and I went over the criteria of what we're looking for.
And that building and parking will take up that whole lot?
Yep, there are actually 5 parcels that is the Mazer property. And some of them are stormwater management, especially there are 2 or 3 along the toll road that will stay stormwater management. The building will be set further back and have parking in the front. So it will be a self-contained property, so to speak.
And of course, we'll have a traffic study on that if we get to the next step.
Yep. Right now, they would have access off of Vine Street and right in, right out off of Joliet Road. It's very close to the tollway, so you would not have a full intersection coming in. You have full access from Vine.
Mhm.
So it's the name of the company J.J. Dory?
Yes,
Okay,
they're in Burr Ridge.
yeah. In the downtown, in the mall, the downtown area there?
Yeah, they're near,
Are they
they're
where
in
they?
the bank, the BMO Bank building.
Okay.
Do you know what kind of insurance?
They do the full line of workers' comp, casualty,
Great. Exciting, good to know.
Yeah, you can, there's a website, JJ Doherty and Associates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone who works there promises to buy at least 2 coffees a day. Maybe we can get a Starbucks. Or somewhere.
Or even an incubator or something there.
I don't think we can make that a requirement, but we could ask.
Oh, you're negotiating anything, as long as it's not illegal, you can negotiate.
Yeah. Okay, anything else that is on anybody's minds?
No, it had been such a long time since we met, and I thought it was appropriate, so thank you.
Yes.
Well, can I just add, I'm looking forward to, I've been assigned to this committee, so after next week, I'll be an official member. And I look forward to the participation. I found the conversation to be interesting, in depth, and substantive. And so I'm looking forward to joining you.
Well, thank you. We welcome you.
Thank you.
We welcome you.
Mhm.
Okay, anybody else? Comment?
Will we possibly be meeting in person next month, or we're just playing that by ear?
We're playing it by ear. It is my hope. So it is still unknown with the governor is what we're going to do. Some of the people, some of the village staff have been fully vaccinated. So we'll see how it goes. It would be definitely lower attendance as far as audience participation, but we will still do, we'll still broadcast the meetings.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I'll let you know as soon as we find out. We're
it's
trying.
difficult to hear a presentation about a design and then try
Yes.
to comment on it when you can't even directly talk to the person.
Correct. I know that
It's
is
challenging. Yeah.
what we will not do is a hybrid meeting where we have some people here at Village Hall and some people attending remote. It's either going to be one or the other. It's just too difficult for the limited staff we have to manage that well.
Hey, John, is there any opportunity to get some advanced readings before the next session on
As
this?
soon as I get something, I'll forward it on because there'll be a lot there. And I don't want to delay the process, but I don't want to rush through it. So yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
And this is our first development really since I've been here, and I'm coming up on 6 years. So it'll be a learning experience for renewal for me because I've done this before, but it'll be new for the commission and the board.
Hey, John, one topic that didn't pop up, but I think there was something where you were going to update us on that, the opposite corner of the Dome property and all the work that was done with the creek and leveling out all the invasive plants.
Yeah,
Any
Public Works went in and took care of it.
Okay.
The state of Illinois has been kind of, they won't sell it to us. They won't give it to us. They want to maintain it. But they maintain it on their criteria, which is not as good as ours. So Public Works just went in and took care of it.
Got it. All right. Thanks for the update.
Hey, John, what about the church across the street there?
Okay. That was also on the agenda for the next board meeting. We decided not to pursue transaction with the church. It was just too costly. Even remotely speaking. So we've decided to not pursue it further. It was well worth it. It was good to explore the concept, but financially, it's
The
just
church just wanted more money than we were willing.
No, they were going to give it to us.
To revamp it and make it accessible for our purpose.
Yes, and it would be in the neighborhood of $5 million just to bring it up to municipal standards, and then probably another $1 million or $2 million to make it a village hall. So now we're looking at 6 to 7 million. And it just was not financially feasible for the village. It was worth investigating. I'm glad we did it, but not gonna happen.
Thank you.
Hey, John, just before we go, just like we're welcoming Eileen to the committee, I just wanted to make sure that we give a voice of appreciation for Amy Jo for the time that she spent with
Yeah,
our committee.
Amy.
And, we're appreciative for her service, and, it's a better committee with her. And we look forward to working with Eileen, and thank Mary Jo for her service and the time she spent with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
For
Very
sure.
good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy Jo.
Well said. Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe you can you stay on the committee, Amy Jo? You're just a wealth of information.
I'll come by once in a while and cause some trouble, I'm sure.
Good, okay.
When there's an interesting agenda.
Yeah. Okay, well, if we have no further comments or contributions, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Okay, and second,
I'll second.
Danielle and Diane, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Meeting adjourned, and we'll see you all next month. And thank you. Thank you for all.
Everybody.
Stay safe out there, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.